especially with screenplays, I love structure. And I feel like my only real job is deciding what something is. Is it a film? Is it a TV? Is it? So that's kind of my job. But I would write, like I started diary writing when I was 14. So I'd be writing even if there was no outlet for it. But it's obviously really good to find an outlet for it. That's like one of the ultimate joys, I think, of this whole thing. Yeah, why I'm interested in like there's been a lot of people discuss like the protagonist's journey compared to plot and structure. And I kind of think they're so interlinked that you can't separate them. So I'm really interested in why the protagonist's journey, which is your book that's currently out. Why did you start with that, or did you start with that? Was that the starting point that
I
you
had
wanted
I
to?
had no intention of writing a book.
Okay.
I mean, there are so many books that have.
Yeah,
When I first started off, it was basically Sid Field's screenplay, The
yeah,
Foundations of Screenwriting,
yeah,
which I read. I've only read like that and maybe skimmed through a couple others.
yeah,
Uh, but it's become this cottage industry. You
yeah,
can't go to any bookstore where you don't see this whole row of
yeah,
how to books. I call them
yeah.
how to write. So I had no interest interest, I guess, in writing anything until I got in conversation with Palgrave Macmillan, which is based in London. It's
Okay. Yeah,
been around for, I don't know, 175 years,
yeah. Publishing
an
house.
academic publishing company.
Yeah,
And we had conversations, and they steered me to, like, why don't you look and see what textbooks film schools are using? Because I think you'll discover that they're not teaching it the way that you promote it on
yeah,
your blog,
yeah,
which is character driven screenwriting. You start with
yeah,
character, like begin with character, end with character,
yeah,
find the story in between. That's one of my
yeah,
mantras. And so I
yeah.
did. I went through a lot of different film schools, actually, not just inside the United States, but also outside. And what I saw were all those books that basically reduce structure to plot.
Right.
Well, that's
Yeah,
one part of it. Yeah,
yeah,
plot is an
yeah,
important part, like what
yeah,
happens. But
yeah,
what's underneath that?
yeah.
The
Definitely.
psychological story of the characters and the emotional story of the characters. And in
Yeah,
my view, that's where you should start the process. You get the plot, character equals plot.
yeah.
So I decided to write the book. It was the hardest thing I ever wrote. Uh,
Right.
I had months of research and then 21 months of writing it right during the middle of COVID for much of it.
Okay. Yeah,
And it's a different kind of writing than writing it sitting there. Oh, I got a scene. I got these
yeah,
characters. No,
yeah. Definitely.
it's
Yeah,
like, you got footnotes and references. I
yeah,
have over 300 movie and TV references in the book.
yeah, yeah.
Plus, I didn't want it to read like a textbook. I wanted to read it like it was an enjoyable. I wanted to write it so it was an
Right.
enjoyable read, and I
Yeah, and
slaved
that
over
definitely comes
every
across. Yeah.
line. Yeah, I get that comment from a lot of people, like most notably students, who
Right.
thank me.
Yeah.
They say, "Oh, this is so much better than
Yeah.
a regular, book
Yeah.
that I'm
Definitely.
reading in film school." So that's how I did that. But I am really passionate about this point that
Yeah.
the best writing is character writing. And there wasn't anything out there that I saw. I'm sure
Yeah.
there are books, but I didn't find them that really spoke to it the way that I teach it and use it to write. And so that's how I got to write The Protagonist Journey. It's an homage to Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I do talk about the hero's journey. I studied him when I was at the University of Virginia. That's where I first was introduced to the hero with a thousand faces. But it's more of a psychologically based type of a thing,
Yeah.
um, and it gets into Carl Jung, the founder of analytical psychology, who was a huge influence on Joseph Campbell, and nobody's really talked. Again, maybe there's people who have, but there's nobody really written about that much. And Jung's ideas are very much in sync with what we see in contemporary cinematic storytelling. And
Yeah.
so, the protagonist journey.
Yeah. Cool. It's really interesting, isn't it? I'm working with another writer who's really great. He's got a 9-step process. And I got to like step 4 and I realized there was nothing about character. It's like, but within it, you kind of build up the character. So it's interesting that they can be so separate, but they're so, and in my view, and probably in your view as well, they're so intertwined. Like you say, with character becomes plot. And I read Sid Field when I was 18, so I think that's how I kind of taught myself how to write screenplays. But I think you're right. There's very few that actually concentrate on character.